Hello everyone and welcome to OSALive. My name is Ashlee Talbot. I am the Assistant Director of Student Activities at Lesley University. And for today's segment, I'm going to be showing you how to make sweet and salty cracker bark.
Do 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 piano do 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 do.
Sweet and salty cracker bark, that sure is a mouthful. Must be really complicated. Oh, what? No, it's not. It can be made using ingredients you can find in your home, such as saltine crackers, brown sugar, butter. This is unsalted butter. I don't really think there's much of a difference between salted butter and unsalted butter, depending on how salty you want the salt part of your sweet and salty cracker bark. But Mama always used the unsalted, so we're gonna stick with Mama's recipe. And to add some chocolatey flavor to it, chocolate chips. You can also use vanilla chips. And I like to top mine off with some pecans or nuts, but you do not need to include nuts in the recipe. And then some aluminum foil and cooking spray. So for the first part of this recipe, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 325. And while your oven is preheating, you are going to line a cookie sheet with your trusty aluminum foil and then spray the top with some cooking spray. You then want to grab your trusty box of saltine crackers and take about one sleeveful, and you're going to line those out so symmetrically on your cookie sheet. Depending on the dimensions of your pan, you may find that you have some excess space at the top. Now, we want to make sure to fill in that space completely, so we are going to try to get the crackers to fit. And if they don't, there we go. And it's okay if some of them get pushed off like this. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. You just want these crackers to try to fit as much as possible. And one more. Oh, I'm out of crackers. It's okay, don't panic. I found a cracker and I broke it in half and I filled in the empty spots, so we should be good. So your tray like this is ready to go. And now we're going to make our sauce. So for the sweet part of the sweet and salty cracker bark, I don't know, that's just the name Mama gave it. And again, you don't mess with Mama. So for your topping, you are going to take 2 sticks of butter and a cup and a half of brown sugar, and you're going to put it all in a pan on low, and you're gonna let it bubble just a little bit. Now, cooking it on low is very important, and that's important anytime you're cooking sugar, because if you cook it too quickly and too high, your sugar will caramelize and burn. And we want something that's a bit more liquidy because we're going to drizzle it all over our crackers. As you can see here, we have our 2 sticks of butter and our cup of sugar. And now I'm gonna put that on a low heat and let that boil. Not boil, it's water boils. What does butter do? Melt? They both melt. Science. As your brown sugar and your butter combination melt, it's gonna start to caramelize or caramelize, you know, depending on however you pronounce it. And so you want to get it into this nice, like rich caramel color that's really blended. We are now going to take our butter and brown sugar concoction and pour it over our saltines. It's really hard to hold a camera and also do this. So you just want to pour it over and basically bury your saltines in sugar and butter, giving it that sweet flavor in the sweet and salty cracker bark recipe. So now we are going to take this batch of crackers and we are going to put in the oven for about 5 minutes. So when you're baking, you want to just keep an eye on your oven. 3 to 5 minutes is the recommendation. As you see, it's starting to bubble, but I still have 2 minutes left, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and pull that out of the oven right now. Now here's my favorite part of the recipe, because here's where it really becomes customizable based on whatever it is you're in the mood for. So I know for some people, they actually leave this recipe as it is. They let the crackers cool, let the sugar harden, and then they have their sugary part of their salty and sugary cracker bark. So you can leave that as it is if you want, Or you can go ahead and grab the chips of your choice. I love the chocolate chips, but you can also do the vanilla. You can do, what's that other flavor? Caramel. You can do caramel on top of caramel. What? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take these chips and I'm actually gonna sprinkle them on to the cracker mixture. As for what is a good amount of chips or topping to use, 1.5 cups usually is good. So you're gonna go ahead and just take this and sprinkle it on top of your crackers. Now what's gonna happen here is your chocolate chips are actually going to melt from the heat of the sugar and the heat from the crackers. So similar to what we did before with the sauce, just making sure we try to get as big an empty space as we can, but it's okay if you miss some places because you'll be able to spread this out later. I'm actually gonna add another 1/2 cup of chips because I like chocolate. All right, so it's been about 5-10 minutes. So here's a look at how our chocolate is doing. It's mostly melted. It's actually really soft because I tried to take up a piece to eat it and I couldn't. So now what we're gonna do is you're just gonna go, you can use a regular knife for this. I might actually switch to a spatula. That might actually be easier. But you wanna just try to go ahead and cover all, whoops, of the crackers with your chocolate, like so. Once you finish with your spreading, this is what your tray should look like. A nice smooth layer of chocolate over a nice layer of caramelized crackers. Now for this next step, again, this recipe, I love it because it's all about what you want, what your choices, what flavors you like. So I like to add an extra little crunch to mine. So I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle on a cup of chopped pecans. You do not have to do this. This is good to go as is. But again, I like having the nuts, so I'm gonna add them in. Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle. Now, before we serve our bark, we need to let it cool. And there are 2 ways that we can do this. You can take your tray as it is and you can throw it in the fridge and let it sit for a few hours. Or you can throw it in the freezer and let it cool for about 30 minutes. So the catch with the freezer is if you do go that option, make sure that you take it out and allow time for the chocolate to come to room temperature before you serve it. Because the last step with bark is actually breaking it into pieces. And if you are doing that after it's been in the freezer for a short while, your chocolate is actually going to separate from your crackers and you'll just have a clump of crackers and a clump of chocolate. So if it goes in the freezer, half hour, let it sit, let it cool, and then break it. Refrigerator, a couple of hours, pull it out, you can break it right away as is.
2 hours later.
So as I mentioned, I put my bark into the fridge. It's been about a couple of seconds for you, about 2 hours for me. So I'm really excited to see how it turned out. Let's take a look. So I'm gonna pull this out and I'm gonna let it sit for a sec and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start slicing this up.
12 seconds later.
The next step here is to go ahead and cut our bark. You can try cutting it in the shape of the crackers. I've never really had much luck with that, but thankfully the mixture of the chocolate and the sugar will help the pieces stick together. So you can just go ahead and cut in a grid pattern. And there we have it, some sweet and salty bark. The separation process, as you can see, can get a little messy, so don't be afraid to do that. And now you have a delicious treat ready to serve to your guests. Enjoy.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, and title, na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
The most important step is cleaning up your mess. So take all this stuff, put it in the sink, get it wet and ready to wash. I also forgot to mention to shut your oven off because I did not do that. Where's the off button? There we go. Now, you may have noticed when I showed you ingredients that my brown sugar was in a bag in a tin, and that's partially because the tin is not big enough for the brown sugar and it came in a set of 3 and that's what I'm stuck with. But Also, a fun cooking fact for you, brown sugar, once it's opened, absorbs most moisture and actually starts to clump. And so in order to avoid those clumps, you shouldn't open a bag of sugar until you're ready to use it. And then once you do open it, if you stick a small piece of bread, for example, I always use the end of the breads that nobody likes. If you stick that in there, either in your tin or in your bag or wherever you're storing your sugar, it actually absorbs the moisture and prevents those little clumps from happening. So I'm putting my brown sugar away, and if you remember that bread trick I told you about, you can take this bread, put it in there, the icky end part, and put it in there, then close this up, the can that's too small to hold the entire bag of brown sugar, and then we're gonna fold this up, which is hard to do with one hand, and then I'll put a clip on this, and I'll put it in the cabinet, along with the other thing of brown sugar, and probably bake something in the future, because I need to use my brown sugar.